Hey everyone, I'm Michael, and this is another episode in my series, A Plant a Week. In this series, I talk about various houseplants. I highlight one for the whole video, talking about how to properly care for it, how to water it, how to propagate it, everything that you need to know to keep your plant healthy and happy. And today we're going to be talking about the queen herself, the Hoya Carnosa Crimson Queen. This plant is called Hoya Carnosa, or as it's more commonly known, the wax plant. There are numerous varieties of Hoya Carnosa, and the care for each variety is relatively similar. But this variety is the Crimson Queen. Known for its ringed variegation, this plant can also produce leaves that are completely white, or some that are tinged with pink. These white leaves are produced more often when the plant is getting ample, bright, indirect light, but often die because there's no chlorophyll in them to absorb sunlight and turn it into energy. Hoyas are typically known for their blooms and the fragrant smell their blooms give off. Mine isn't blooming, and actually none of my Hoyas have bloomed yet, but typically you won't see a Hoya bloom until it's been in your home for a few years. It takes a while to acclimate to its new environment, but when it does, you can expect intermittent blooms year-round. Now, some people get this Hoya Carnosa, the Crimson Queen, confused with the Crimson Princess, but an easy way to remember the difference, and I totally stole this from Betsy Begonia, is that a queen wears her white like a crown, ringing the outside, while a princess wears her white like a gown. I actually don't have a Crimson Princess in my collection. For some reason, the Crimson Queens seem to be more readily available in my area. Now, as with pretty much all Hoyas, you don't want to overwater them. They hate having wet feet, and I've learned this the hard way. I nearly killed a Hoya numelarioides, I don't know how to say that word, numelarioides? Hoya numelarioides? That's probably it. The pink corona, just by giving it a little too much water. All of my Hoyas, including this Crimson Queen, are in nursery pots with drainage holes, and most of them are sitting on top of garden foam just so that when I do water them, there's a separation between the water and the root. Hoyas are epiphytic. Man, this is just going to be a video of me trying to pronounce plant words, which means in nature they grow on the sides of trees and on other plants, which is partially why they don't like their roots sitting in wet soil. So the type of soil you want to keep your Hoyas in is something incredibly well draining. I keep mine in a mixture that's about 50% potting mix and 50% orchid bark with some perlite thrown in, which I guess comes to about 110%, which doesn't really make any sense, but you get it. I'm not good with ratios. Hoyas also like to be pot bound, so there's no rush to repot something that you just purchased, unless you've drowned it and it starts to go downhill. Then you maybe want to repot it with some fresh, well-draining soil. I keep a number of Hoya, and I've found that in terms of lighting, these plants require brighter lighting than most plants. Sure, you can keep them in an indirect light area, but their growth will be incredibly slow. I actually keep my Hoyas in an area where they get direct sunlight throughout the afternoon, and because of that, they grow quite prolifically. That being said, most Hoya don't do well when the weather drops. Up here in Canada, during the winter, you want to move your Hoyas out of any drafty windows, as temperature drops can really affect them. Most of my Hoyas end up under grow lights throughout the winter months. However, Hoya Carnosas tend to be a bit hardier than other Hoyas. Just make sure to keep an eye on it if you have it in a colder window. Hoyas aren't big feeders, so they're not going to need a lot of fertilization. However, I learned a little tip when it comes to growing Hoya and increasing the rate at which they grow. Get yourself a bottle of orchid spray, and once a week spray it on the leaves and vines of your Hoya. Hoyas and orchids are both epiphytes. Damn, there's that word again. And for some reason, the orchid fertilizer spray works wonders on the Hoya. The best way to propagate Hoya Carnosa is through cuttings. The vines have these little adventitious roots that you'll be able to see dotted along the vines, and from there, new growth will emerge when rooting cuttings. You can root them in water or in sphagnum moss. I've propagated them both ways. They took about the same amount of time, normally about 1.5 to 2 months. As far as pests, I've never had a problem with them on my Crimson Queen, but I'd say with most Hoyas, mealybugs are the most common pests that you'll come across, and there's tons of different ways to combat mealybugs, from insecticides to just picking them off, which is kind of disgusting. As far as toxicity, Hoyas are classified as non-toxic, but that's not entirely true. They're mildly toxic, barely toxic. While toxicity really differs with how much is ingested and by who or what, it's better to be on the safe side and just keep this plant out of reach from animals and curious little kids. The Crimson Princess is one of the easier Hoyas to find. It's fast growing, has beautiful variegation, and gorgeous blooms. You can keep it a number of different ways, trellis it and train the vines to climb all over a trellis, or, how I have mine, just hanging and dangling wherever it wants to go. One interesting feature of the Hoya is that their vines wander and will wrap around furniture and other plants that it comes into contact with. Some people like to keep theirs trimmed and bushy, others let it go wild. And yes, I am still talking about Hoyas, but with its availability, there's no stopping you from filling your home with Hoya vines and those fragrant Hoya blooms. Thanks again for watching. Remember to like and subscribe for similar content. On Mondays, I post videos about houseplants. And on Fridays, I also post videos about houseplants, and reading, writing, photography, art, and any other generic interests of mine. As always, you can find my social media links in the description below. Also, you can find links to H&H Games, the board game company I've helped create, and our debut board game, Season of Heroes. You can also find the Amazon links to my fantasy series, A Chronicle of Crowns. Thanks for watching, bye!